Hi, my name is Sue and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do a yoga flow class that will lead towards Hanumanasana or monkey pose. Now monkey pose is the splits. We're going to come into splits on one side and then on the other side, and it's a difficult pose to get into. I may or may not be able to get into this pose today, but I definitely can't do it right now at this moment without any warm-up or preparation. So today we're going to do a prep class and see how far we can take it. To do this class, you will need a couple of blocks or at least some kind of props that will double as blocks, pillows or something like that, so that you can support yourself from the ground up. Other than that, I hope you enjoy this and just take it in its spirit. You don't have to come to the splits today. You're just working towards those splits. Let's get started. It's a full class today, so let's start off with a little bit of centering. Just allow yourself to come into a comfortable seated position. Rest your hands on your legs, close your eyes, and roll your shoulders away from your ears. Begin with breath flowing in and out through the nose. Deepen those inhales. Draw out your exhales. With your next exhale, soften your facial features. Relax your cheeks, your jaw, and allow your shoulders to melt. Draw away from the ears. Soften your limbs, hands, fingers, feet, and toes. Your entire body is more relaxed. You're set and centered. Let us begin. Okay. Come on down into a child's pose to start off with, with your hands and knees. Take the knees out a little wider, bring the toes together, draw the hips back towards those heels. Place your forehead on the ground and soften. Feel those hips grow heavy, sink deep, gently rounded spine. While still remaining in this child's pose, walk your fingers towards the left side of the mat. So just walk them over, get a good side stretch, settle in there, and take a couple more deep breaths. That's great. Come on back to the center and walk it over to the other side. Good. Come on back to the center and rise up into a tabletop position. Come onto your tabletop. Set up so that the knees are hips width apart. Press them into the hands and really round out the spine. Tuck the tailbone in, tuck the chin under. A good stretch of the back of the body. Allow the belly to drop to come into cow pose. And then level off. Come into a puppy pose or heart melting pose. Stretch those arms out. Let the chest melt down towards the ground. Keep the hips up high. Hold it here. One more deep breath. Just warm up those shoulders a little before we come into down dog. Okay, so let's move into down dog now. Come on back into a tabletop, curl the toes under, and adjust for downward facing dog. So first down dog, good spread to those shoulders, pedal out the feet, bend one knee, straighten the other leg, and then switch. So we're just trying to warm up the back of those legs a little. You might even want to shift the hips from side to side. Keep breathing in and out through the nose. Keep pressing down into those fingers. You don't want to put all your weight on the wrists. Some into those fingers as well. Okay, and then downward facing dog. Both legs are straighter, those heels reaching down towards the mat. And send your gaze up in between the hands and walk your feet to the top of the mat. Come into a forward fold. So first few forward bends, knees a little softer. Let the upper body relax. As soon as you start to feel a little bit more warm to the back of the legs, you can try to straighten the legs a little bit more. Press the hips up towards the ceiling. We really want lots of length through the back of the legs today for this class. Yeah. Move the head a little, loosen up to the neck and face. Good. And then let's come up, bend the knees and make your way up to standing. Draw your shoulders away from your ears. Palms facing forward. Okay. Tadasana, mountain pose. Okay. Let's warm up even more with some salutations. Okay. Bring your hands into prayer position, and with your inhale, stretch those arms out and overhead, and exhale, fold into forward bend. Inhale to wave up halfway, hands on your shins on the floor for that flat back figure 7 shape. Exhale, hands on the mat, walk your feet back into high push-up position. We've got a nice long spine here. Just hover for a moment. Okay. Let's take it back into downward dog. Just a little moment here to walk it off. Again, maybe shift both hips over to one side. Hold it there. Come back to center. Shift over to the other side. And then back to center. Let's finish off our sun salutation back into a high push-up. Taking low push-up next, either bring the knees down onto the mat or keep those legs straight. Elbows hugged in close to the body as you lower. And inhale into your cobra. Or if you're feeling warm enough, up dog with those thighs lifted off the mat, pressing down into the feet. Okay. Next, exhale, stick it into downward facing dog. Safest way is from your toes, from your knees, and then back into down dog. Good. Let's continue to do that side stretch. Shift your hips over to the right side. If you need a little bit more to the stretch, you can cross that left ankle over the right and inch that left hand towards the top left corner of the mat. Come back to center, downward facing dog. Shift your hips towards the left side, either staying here or crossing that right foot behind the left, inching that right hand towards the top right corner of the mat. Good. Coming back to the center, downward facing dog. Lots of length to the back of the legs. Rise up onto your tiptoes, bend your knees, bring the belly towards those thighs, press down into the hands, and then as you exhale, straighten those legs, heels down towards the mat. So that again, rise up onto your tiptoes, hug the knees, hug the belly in towards the thighs, pressing down into those hands, and then back into downward facing dog. Good. At the end of this exhale, gaze in between the hands, step, walk, or hop your feet up to the top of the mat. Once you get there, inhale to lift up halfway, resetting. Exhale to fold forward bend. And inhale, let's come all the way back up, stretch your arms out, let the palms meet, maybe a gentle back bend, and then exhale, hands back to prayer. Good. Let's add on the side stretch. Inhale, reach those arms overhead. It's the same as before, but this time interlace fingers, point index fingers. Let's take it over to one side. Good. Stretch to the opposite side of the body. Inhale back to the center and over to the other side. Great. Let's come back to the center. Interlace the fingers behind your backs. Keep those legs straight as you fold forward. If you're still feeling quite cold and have the knees bent, but we want to try to really now use those quads, use those hamstrings to really straighten the legs. Feel a stretch at the back of the body. Sorry, use your quads to do that. Okay, so just keep straightening those legs. Relax the neck and face. Yeah, one more deep breath here. And then release, soften, let the arms relax back down onto the mat. Inhale, lift up halfway for your flat back. Exhale, hands on the mat, step back or hop back into your high push-up position. From your knees or from your toes, lower, low push-up, Chaturanga Dandasana. And inhale through into Cobra or upward facing dog. Good. And next exhale, flow back into downward facing dog. Okay, let's take our right leg and float it off the ground. Do your best to lift the leg up high, keeping the hips and shoulders level. If you want to roll out the ankle here, you can. Or just stay static and pause in this three-legged downward facing dog. Let's take the same right foot, right leg, and step it forward in between the hands, placing that right foot up for a runner's lunge. Good. For a gentler version, lower the back knee down onto the mat. Otherwise, stay here. Keep that front knee aligned over the front ankle and the back leg quite strong. Place the left hand on the ground and rotate your chest towards the right side. Hands on the thighs, right hand on the right thigh, or reach that right hand up towards the ceiling. You keep that back leg strong in this pose. Okay. And then release that right hand down onto the ground. Do your best to straighten the front leg, even if it's a little. Lengthen the spine and fold. You can try peeling that right toe off the mat for a deeper stretch. Okay, one more deep breath. And let's come back to downward facing dog from here. So just take it back to down dog, either staying in down dog or shifting forward and taking a half sun salutation. Just keep the body warm this way. All right, in downward facing dog, take that left leg and stretch it up high. Again, do your best to keep the hips level and shoulders level. Option to give that left ankle a little rotation here, a little love. Okay, and then we'll take that same left foot forward to come into a runner's lunge. Carefully place it up in between those hands, front knee over the front ankle, back leg nice and strong. Just holding it here for a moment. Remember, you have the option to lower the back knee down onto the mat for a softer version of this pose. We're planting that right hand down on the ground and rotating the chest towards the left side. Option to take that left hand up towards the ceiling. Do what you can. Make sure that back leg is still strong if you have the knee off the mat. Good. One more deep breath. And then we'll release that left hand down onto the mat and just do your very best to straighten that front leg, even if it's a little. You just want to begin to feel a deeper stretch to the back of that left leg. Good, one more deep breath. And now let's bring it back to downward facing dog from here. Downward dog, option to take that half sun salutation, your low push up, up dog, and into downward facing dog. Good. At the end of this exhale, gaze in between the hands, step, walk, or hop your feet up to the top of the mat. Once you get there, inhale, lift up halfway. Exhale to fold forward bend, and inhale all the way back up. Stretch your arms out, let the palms meet, gentle back bend, and exhale back to the very start. Let's keep going. Inhale, stretch the arms overhead. Big reach. Exhale, fold. Forward bend. And inhale, lift up halfway, flat back. Exhale, hands on the mat. Step or hop back, high push-up to low push-up. Inhale, cobra or upward facing dog. And exhale to flow back into down dog. Okay, take the right leg and float it off the ground in three-legged dog once more. Option to bend the right knee and open up. Try to get the right hip a little higher than the left. Try to bring that right heel towards the right hips. Keep pointing the right knee up towards the ceiling. And then soften. Place the right foot all the way up in between the hands for runner's lunge once more. This time gently lowering the back knee down onto the mat and pointing the back toe. If your mat's a little thin, you can always pat that knee, rolling the mat under. Keep letting the hips melt down and forward. Make sure that left knee is at least slightly behind the left hip, behind the hips. Now just stay here, or you can start to make your way up a little higher. This is where those blocks could come in handy. It's just an option. Start to make your way up, peeling the belly of the thigh, and try to get the spine a little lifted. You can place your hands on your thighs here as well. Good. Maybe introduce a little bit of a back bend here as well, just to deepen that stretch. You want to feel it at the front of that left hip. So if you need more, just an option. You can lift that left hand up towards the ceiling or both hands up. Keep breathing. Good. Alright, now let's release those hands down onto the mat, onto your block. Walk back into a half split. Okay, so if you don't quite feel this stretch, then you just need to walk that front foot forward a little bit more. Make sure that the spine is long, so don't run at the spine. Take an inhale to lift the spine and then fold forward. So you may or may not use the blocks for this one. Also, another thing to note, you want to try to keep those hips level as best as you can. Body wants to take the path of least resistance and that left hip wants to shift back. You want to try to keep those hips in line with one another. One more deep breath. Okay, and let's walk the hands back forward. Take it into a crescent lunge. So align that front knee over the front ankle and start to make your way up. Okay to have the back knee bend slightly as you lift that, working to keep the spine straight up and down. So hands at your waist or reach it up for a crescent lunge. Nice strong legs. Okay, once you're there, try your best to straighten that back leg, but it's okay to keep it slightly bent. Relax the shoulders. Try to open up a little bit more, maybe turning your gaze slightly up towards the ceiling. Do your best. One more deep breath. And let's take this into a spinal twist. Hands in prayer. Lean slightly forward. See if you can bring the left elbow to the outside of the right knee. And if this is difficult for you at this point, you can come back to the first pose that we did. Okay, so just little twist, crescent twist here, hands in prayer. Try your best to rotate your chest towards the right side and then keep those legs strong. Press down into the floor. One more deep breath. And let's come back to the front. Hands on the mat. Take it back to downward facing dog. So just take your time. Down dog. Again, downward facing dog, just stay there, or always chance to sneak in that half sun salutation here, little push up, cobra, up dog, and back to downward facing dog. Good. A little bit of movement, pedaling out the feet, shifting the hips side to side. Take breaks whenever you need to. Come into child's pose for those breaks. So in your down dog, take your left leg, stretch it up high, three-legged dog. Try this version. Try lifting the left hip higher than the right, pointing the knee towards the ceiling and just pressing that left heel towards the hips. Good. All right, let's level off the hips and carefully step the left foot forward to come into dragon pose or low lunge. Okay, so we've got a back knee down onto the mat, gently lower it down. Make sure that right knee is at least slightly behind the hips. Front knee over the front ankle. Let those hips sink down and forward. Staying here is fine. Using blocks here might be helpful to lift the belly off the thigh. So just keep pressing those hips down and forward. Take a moment to check your alignment. Sometimes that front knee, you don't want it too far forward over the toes. You don't want it too far back either. Good. Need a little bit more. Take that right hand, reach it up towards the ceiling. Maybe the left hand as well. Good. Let's bring those hands down onto the floor and then shift back into a half split, just as necessary. Be open up a little bit more. So just focusing on stretch the back of the left leg. Use blocks if it helps you lengthen your spine. And then deepen as you bow over the extended leg. So take deep breaths here again, in through the nose and out through the nose. Don't let that right hip shift back. One more deep breath. Okay, now let's come back forward and take our crescent pose next. So with this crescent pose, your back knee lifts off the mat. Okay, and we're going to come up. Okay, so work to lift the spine off the mat. Keep the spine straight up and down. Hands can remain at your thighs, at your waist, or you can reach those arms overhead. And then once you're here, you can start to straighten out that back leg a little bit more. Deepen the hip flexor stretch. Okay, if it's all right with you to take a little bit of a back bend, keep those legs in the same position. Lift the chest up towards the ceiling. Maybe turn your gaze up slightly. Whew, gets tough. Gets tough. One more. Okay, and let's settle into our twist. Lean slightly forward, hands in prayer. Bring your right elbow to the outside of the left knee. And remember, if this is hard, lower that right hand down onto the ground and come into that first version of the twist instead. Good. Strong legs. One more deep breath. Okay, and let's unwind that. Come back to the front, back to downward facing dog. Okay, so take your down dog and a little bit of movement in down dog. And of course, that half sun salutation, if you could use a little bit more today. At the end of this exhale, gaze in between the hands, step, walk, or hop your feet up to the top of the mat. Inhale, lift up halfway. Exhale to fold. And inhale, come all the way back up. Let the palms touch, gentle back bend. And let's take it right down into forward bend. Cross the left ankle behind the right. You want to try to get a stretch to the outside of the left leg. Inhale to lift up slightly. And exhale to fold. Use blocks if you need it. Front knee can be slightly bent for a deeper stretch. Good. Come back up and cross the other leg over. Same thing. Inhale, lift, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Bend the front knee if you need a deeper stretch. Come back up, back into downward, into a forward bend. Inhale, lift up halfway, flat back. Exhale, hands on the mat, step or hop back into high push-up. Take low push-up into cobra, up dog, and exhale back into downward facing dog. Okay, good. Now in our down dog, let us take our right leg and lift it up high once again into three-legged dog. And this time set up for a single-legged pigeon pose, bringing the right knee up behind the right wrist. For this one, you want to make sure that the back leg is straight back and hips are level, shoulders are level. We'll start off with a little lift of the spine. So if you need your blocks here again, you can certainly do it. Okay, so do your best to keep those hips level. Don't let the right hip drop down. A little bit of a back bend. And then you can try walking that back foot back a little bit more. Tough one here, so keep breathing in through the nose. Focus on that breath out through the nose. Good. One more. Okay, and then let's soften down into a pigeon pose. It's a great stretch for those hips. If you think you need a little bit more, you can't quite feel the stretch, walk that front foot forward, but make sure that the right hip doesn't drop down. You want to keep the hips level and the spine level. So head can come down to rest on the floor or on your stacked hands. And then let's come back up. Now, only if it feels right for you today, you can come into a bind with the legs. So you can lift that right foot off that left foot off the mat. So you can start by bringing that right foot in a little bit more. Again, don't let the hips drop down. So if you mind dropping down, I'll use a block to support it. Okay, So you can look for a little bind here. You can reach one hand back, you can reach both hands back, or if you want, you can come into a pigeon or mermaid version of this pose. So it's up to you what you want to do here. Again, you don't have to do this. It's just for fun and just a little bit more of a stretch if you can do it. So try to keep the shoulders squared at the front, and you do your version of your single-legged king pigeon pose. Good. Take one more deep breath. And then let's carefully release that. Release that foot. Find your way back to downward facing dog here, or tabletop if you had enough of down dogs. Give that little bit of movement in down dog. Walk it off. And again, it's a great place here to take that half sun salutation. Okay. Take that left leg, lift it up high, three-legged dog. And then step the left foot, left knee up behind the left wrist. Okay, we'll begin with a little bit of a swan pose, so a little bit of a back bend. You can place your hands by your side and lift up, or use those blocks to your advantage. Feel a little lift that way. Good. Keep breathing, smile through it all. Pretty tough poses coming up, right? So just do what we can. Kind of important to honor where your body is at this moment in time, even if you were able to come deeper into this pose before. Okay, let's move into our reclined single-legged pigeon pose. Again, all those checks, hips level, spine level, shoulders level, and then allow the upper body to relax down. And just soften through the upper bodies. You relax your shoulders, your face, and deep breaths as always. Okay, so start to make our way out of this pose and start to lift up. My left hip is obviously a little better. The hip is not lifted off the ground. You can try to lift that right foot off the ground or just stay here in that swan pose. Okay, so if you're doing the lift, careful as you lift up and look for a bind, maybe one arm back or both hands. Not today. Okay, just looking for a little bit more to the hip flexor. Good, and then release that right foot down onto the mat. Take it back into downward facing dog here. So back, down dog, tabletop if you had enough. Half sun salutation if you need more. Good. Alright, little pedal out the feet, back to downward facing dog. Now we're going to try to come into our split Hanumanasana, and this is where those blocks could come in really handy. There's a few ways that you can do this pose with those blocks. You can use your blocks to really help plant your hands down, and that way you can come into a split that way. Some people prefer to use the block as a little bit of support for the hips. So I'm going to do the one with the blocks as support for the hips. You can choose the other way if you want. So we've already done a half split here. We'll take the right foot forward and have your left knee back. So this is your half split that you've already attempted. Okay, so to get into a full split, you're going to start to walk your front foot forward and the left knee back. And this is where those blocks will come in handy. Right? You can place a little weight on the block on your hip or on your thigh. And come on up. Spend a couple of breaths here. And start to lower the block down a little bit more. So as the body's a little bit more prep, you might just surprise yourself a little bit with a deeper stretch, and you might feel, oh, I can actually come deeper into this today. So then use the block and lower it down a little bit more, maybe an inch or two. Maybe with your hands down on the ground or lift it up. The full version of this pose is with those arms lifted overhead, but you do what is required today. Maybe you can lower the block even more. Okay, so just make sure the back leg is straight back. Try to keep your hips as square as possible. You'll know quickly where your limits are and you'll just stay with it. So feeling it either in this hip flexor that's stopping you, or in my case, it's my tight right hamstring. So that's where I'm limited. So it'll depend on your body. And just stay with it. Try for a few breaths. Okay, so very carefully, you're going to start to make your way out of this pose. Press down into the floor, slide the front foot in a little, slide that back knee in a little, and just kind of inch it back to the center. All right, slowly make your way back to your tabletop, your downward facing dog. Walk it off. Take those Savasana salutations. All right. So let's do the other side. We've got that right knee down and the left leg stretched out. Make use of the blocks. And this time I'm going to do it the other way, where I have the blocks by my sides and use my hands to support me instead. Okay, so the blocks are going to come down by my hips as I start to straighten that left leg. Inch that right knee back. Okay, so I'm going to try not to lean too much into those hands and try to get the stretch to happen with the weight of my body. Okay, a few deep breaths here. Now we're naturally better on one side than the other anyways. Our bodies are uneven. I find that I can come down quite a bit with this one on this side with my left leg straight. Always checking to make sure that the body is aligned. Okay, just a little bit more, not too much more now. Use the blocks and put it aside. Won't need it anymore. You can tell I still have a little bit of space, but that's all I can do today without hurting myself anyways. Alright, and then let's release from this pose. Slide that back knee in a little. Slide that front foot in a little. It's a little awkward to come out of this pose sometimes. Okay, and then let's make our way back to our down dog here. Tabletop, if you had enough of down dog. A little bit of vinyasa. Good. Paddle it out. And come into a child's pose. Just allow all those angles to close up in any child's pose. Good. All right. So now let's come on down to onto our backs, and we're going to do a spinal twist, a little bit more on the back. Okay, so onto our backs, knees into the chest. Give that a little bit of a roll out. Okay. Just take right knee over the left, come into a reclined shoelace pose. So right knee over the left, you can hug the knees into the chest. You can deepen the stretch by holding onto your shins, your calf, your ankles, or your feet. And you want to keep those thighs together as you pull gently in the legs down towards the floor. So pull the feet down towards the floor, using a little bit of your arm strength. And then sometimes the tailbone really wants to pop off the ground. If you try to press that tailbone down, you get a better stretch that way. Yeah, let's release that. Maybe a little windshield wiper. Okay, and then let's take the left knee over the right. And you adjust for depth. Maybe holding onto your shin or your ankle or your feet. And draw the feet down towards the floor again. Tailbone pressing down for a deeper stretch. Okay, and then release that. Windshield wipers. I always like to finish off with a spinal twist. I think it's so good for the low back to just stretch out a little. So if you have a favorite twist that you'd rather take, please feel free to do that, or else just follow along with me. So we're going to place our feet flat on the ground and bump your hips towards the right side of the mat, and then allow the knees to gently drop to the left. And just keeping those shoulders grounded, turning your gaze away from the knees. If you think you need a little bit more, if you can't quite feel that stretch, wrap the right knee over the left. Eagle legs. And that should deepen the stretch. Good. Let's come back to the center. Wind those legs and bump your hips towards the left side of the mat. Let the knees drop to the right, and if you need more, wrap the left knee over the right and eagle legs. And that should deepen the twist. Turn your gaze away from those knees. Keep the shoulders grounded and breathe. Good. Unwind, come back to the center. Make sure the hips are back to the middle of the mat. Gather your knees into the chest, a little bit of a roll out. Any final adjustments to come into Savasana. I'm going to let the video run a little longer today so that you can be in Savasana for as long as you like. Aiming, about that 5 minutes will be ideal. So any last movements here, and then allow those legs to stretch out, set up comfortably for Shavasana. Grab a hold of those socks and sweaters to make sure you're not too cool and the body is not distracted in your pose, in your Shavasana. Close your eyes and allow the arms to relax and feel your limbs soften. Relax your facial features. Let your belly rise and fall gently in its natural rhythm as your breath returns to normal. Let tensions melt off the shoulders. Relax your jaw, your cheeks, and that space in between your eyebrows softens, the forehead relaxes. Entire body at ease. Mind is calm. Enjoy your Shavasana.